our expert and moderator, Nino Tsereteli, will lead our discussion today. I want to thank her because she really gathered amazing speakers today in very short note. And she will explain also the situation and why we choose this topic. I will just inform you that this discussion is organized in the framework of International Network of Judicial Reformers by Democracy Index Georgia and group of independent lawyers with support of USAID, Rule of Law Program. Really, we have very difficult time after elections, parliamentary elections, where it was suspicious that it was faked. Prime Minister announced that Georgia opposes the process of EU integration till to 2028, and this announcement was followed by massive protests in the street, which people demand to return our European future. And today our discussion is on the topic of judicial failures in Georgia, challenges and strategies for democratic accountability, as independent courts really play a critical role in preserving electoral accountability and preventing the capture of state power. So I will not be very long because I will pass the floor to Nino. She will explain us about this relevance of this topic and also present our very amazing and interesting speakers today. So Nino, please, the floor is yours and lead our very interesting discussion for today.
Thank you. So we have today, I'm very thankful to the speakers to have found time so close to the holiday season. And we have definitely four fantastic speakers that are here today with us. Starting with Eka Beselia, who is the head of House of Justice and former MP. And importantly, she was representing the president in relation to the Constitutional Court case challenging the constitutionality of the electoral legislation and the elections of the 26th of October. And I very much hope that you will tell us more about what were the expectations and strategies in relation and her assessment of the Constitutional Court decision, which is recent and which declared the application inadmissible. We have with us also Zoltan Fleck, who is a professor of law and sociology at ELTE in Budapest. We have Dragos Kalin. Forgive me if I mispronounce your last name. I'm not so sure about it. Judge at Bucharest Court of Appeal and co-president of the Romanian Judges Forum Association. And finally, Marcin Volny, who is the human rights lawyer. He works with the Helsinki Foundation of Human Rights. It's great that we have representatives of academia, judiciary, and civil society, and the politics in our panel. I will not, probably many of you are aware of the situation in Georgia with regard to the judiciary and more broadly political context, but just a few points that I wanted to make. What we saw in the past month was a lot of litigation before the courts, and courts have been in relation to the election. One of the biggest points was there were multiple violations and irregularities. One of them was, for example, the secrecy of voting, that it was very easy to identify who voted for whom, and it created the atmosphere of fear. So this was one of the key points in the litigation before the ordinary courts as well as the Constitutional Court. So we had in ordinary courts at the first instance level only one judge, essentially, to my knowledge, ruling in favor of the applicant civil society organizations brought cases, so in favor of the applicant, and annulled the election results on account of violation of the secrecy of voting. However, then appellate courts that were the last instance courts in this type of cases essentially rejected the appeals and also repealed the first instance court decision. And everyone who knows about the situation in the judiciary probably would understand the context and why this systematic rulings in favor of the Georgian Dream essentially happened. That we have these influential judges that essentially packed courts with the loyal or kind of passive judges. We recently had the European Court of Human Rights decision, Bakradze versus Georgia, where the European Court essentially found the violation and found that one of the leaders of the Unity of Judges Association that was refused appointment was really discriminated on account of her different views. We'll see what happens in terms of implementing that decision. We see also judicial failure of the courts, not only to just preserve the electoral integrity and prevent power capture, but also what happens with the cases related to the people demonstrating right now, those that are arrested and mistreated. Recently, Amnesty International had a report where they pointed out that courts essentially ignored the evidence of torture and ill treatment presented by civil society organizations that defend these people. And also, they essentially didn't pay attention to the evidence that was exposing police violence, and they have been imposing administrative fines. So in this respect, courts also emerge as the part of the repressive apparatus, of repressive machinery of the state. Another problematic aspect is in recent legislation, essentially, for example, with the foreign agents, so-called foreign agents law, or law on transparency of foreign influence. Even if one challenges the acts based on this law, for example, imposition of fines, it doesn't, even if you challenge it, doesn't stop the operation of these acts issued under this law. So essentially, we see that court decisions would not even make difference in certain categories of cases. And most importantly, Constitutional Court's intervention, which was very alarming, not only in relation to the case related to the elections, but also several weeks before in relation to the law on the transparency of foreign influence, so-called foreign agents law. That the court essentially refused to defend constitutional rights. In a way, we will hear more about it from Eka Beselia, I think. So one of the biggest points was that the Georgian Dream proceeded with convening the first sitting of the parliament, even if the mandates of all 150 MPs were challenged before the court, and essentially shifted blame for, so there are 2 points essentially in the Constitutional Court case. One was about the secrecy of voting and another about the voting rights of Georgians living abroad that didn't have a possibility to vote. So there were many problems with this ruling. I will leave it to Eka Beselia to comment on this. Perhaps we had two dissenting opinions, which read like the ruling that we would want to see from the Constitutional Court. In a way that essentially Constitutional Court, in my understanding, found each and every reason to refuse not to take this case. And there were issues also with their ruling on the foreign agents law, in a way that even though the case was taken, they did not impose interim measures. In that sense, that courts are really failing to fulfill their key role and key task. And in this situation, we are trying to ask the following questions. So the first would be, what can we do if the status quo remains? So is it worthwhile to engage with such courts? And would it vary from case to case? Maybe in some cases it makes sense to go and challenge, but in other cases not. The second question would be, is it realistic to expect that these judges in captured courts really will start resisting all of a sudden, and how significant such resistance could be, should be in order for it to change the dynamic? What conditions should be present in order for that to happen? It's interesting what lessons could be learned. We have three representatives of three countries here, Hungary, Romania, and Poland. So what lessons could we learn from those countries? And in some countries, judges have been more proactive and defending rights, but in others, not so much. And finally, what could we, whether we can explore the potential of using the European courts and whether they are effective in countering authoritarian trends. So these are more or less the issues that we are sort of grappling with in this case. So if status quo remains, what do we do? Or if it changes, like it happened in Poland, which I'm not very optimistic about such a scenario, what could be challenges that we would face also? I will stop here, and perhaps I'll have separate set of questions for each of the speakers, but I will first go to Eka Beselia, and perhaps it would be wonderful if you could tell us, because I understood that there was a degree of skepticism from the president in terms of going to the Constitutional Court, but there was a strategy behind it. So what were the expectations, and what are your thoughts about the Constitutional Court decision in this respect? Please, floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you to KETA and the organization that does very important discussions nowadays. And today's meeting is both timely and useful, to the point, especially for the professional community. Thank you very much to Nino for excellent introduction. A few words about myself. Been a lawyer for 26 years in protection of human rights. So I've been practicing lawyer, protecting human rights, and also I was a member and head of Human Rights Committee at the Parliament. I currently had Justice House of Justice, an non-governmental organization that provides trainings for judges and prosecutors. Now I'd like to tell you more about my cooperation with President. I represented President on two lawsuits. One of Nino mentioned one of them, the so-called agent law, foreign agents law, and the second one, my second representation, concerned a lawsuit to cancel the results of the 26th October parliamentary election. Even though the president didn't necessarily trust the court, she thought it would be prudent to go to court, because we needed to use this opportunity as the kind of last resort, the last legal resort to maybe tackle the problem. I'm also observing the currently ongoing rallies and peaceful citizens arrested as a result or in relation to the rallies, the trials going on in the courts. Our lawyers are representing actually more than 400, more than 500 people have been detained or arrested for various reasons. These are administrative cases, administrative law cases with no acquittals or no all of them have been, condemned, and in no one case did courts refuse to use special measures or arrest measures, detention as an interim measure. And as Nino mentioned, the so-called clan or the government by clan in the court, in the judiciary, is quite obvious. Unfortunately, the judiciary as a whole is under the heavy influence of the current ruling party. There are some individual judges, really a few of them, and a few judgments by these few judges. Of course, the few judgments served as a stimulus and a reason to be proud with. So, for example, Judge Bujoa, a district judge from the Tetritzkaro region, who said that yes, there was a breach of the secrecy principle of elections. President based her claim on numerous, was basing her claim on numerous, reasons and basis. For example, once again, the secrecy, breach of secrecy. The secrecy of ballots was not guaranteed. So any third interesting person could see who the voter voted for. So what was the choice made by the voter?
ნორმატიული აქტების საფუძველზე მიღებული გადაწყვეტილებები, რომლითაც შეირჩა საარჩევნო
made possible through the normative acts. In other words, the specific resources, the type of the technical side of the ballots and everything was such as that everything, all of this didn't ensure secrecy of the vote. So another reason our claim was based on was the inability by expats, citizens living outside Georgia, to vote in these elections. And according to the Constitution, there is universal suffrage. All the citizens should be able to vote, but somehow Georgian citizens living outside, some of them were allowed, some of them were not. And here I should mention Judge Dugushi, who started his dissenting opinion with an excellent introduction. He quoted the Czech Republic's judicial and also a paraphrase from a Georgian movie. So he quoted a Czech court, but also from Georgian movie. Will this road lead to Notre Dame? Will this road lead to the church? And then there's this voice disembodied. No, it doesn't. So if it doesn't lead to the church, why do we need this road at all? So this is a dialogue from the Georgian movie, and then he makes a conclusion after this rhetoric question. So why do we need a constitutional court if it doesn't do a constitutional control? The Georgian Constitutional Court said it is not going to hear this lawsuit at all. So didn't accept the lawsuit for decision. So an inadmissibility decision was made. Somewhere in some room, this decision was drafted, and there's one dramatic moment characterizing this process. So I went down to Batumi. This is a place where the Constitutional Court is currently located. So I was there several days waiting. Maybe the court, appoints, schedules a hearing to hear this lawsuit. Well, it takes about 5 hours to drive from Tbilisi to Batumi. So I was staying there, and every day we were calling on the court to appoint the hearing. But it turns out the court has already made a decision. The decision is not to hear the lawsuit. And so during all these several days, 5 days or so, I was wondering when the court is going to schedule a hearing. And it turns out that not only there will be no hearing, not only they have not scheduled a hearing, but they already made a decision to not hear the lawsuit at all. So that's it's a sample, it's an example what a constitutional court decision or a judicial decision should not be. So no decision, so no hearing was the parties. The court said, they are not going to hear, and as if the claim is not within the jurisdiction or something. It's one of the reasons the court referred to the laws, electoral laws on which basis the election was conducted were recently adopted about 15 months ago, and so the laws are very recent, they cannot be challenged or something like this. However, Judge Uhushi, in his dissenting opinion, says that actually this court has a different practice. There may be a normative act. The application, but practical application of the normative act demonstrates how the normative act. So there is a law, but the application of the law is such as that it prevents the upholding of human rights and freedoms. In other words, when there is a law, but it actually hinders the exercise of human rights and freedoms, it can be challenged in the court, in the constitutional court at least.
ფორმალური დარღვევაც კი არ იყო ამ შემთხვევაში, იმიტომ რომ ეს ნაწილი გამოიყენა სასამართლომ ქვეყნის გარეთ ჩვენი მოქალაქეების არჩევნებში მონაწილეობის უფლების.
Okay, and also when it comes to secrecy of election, this was a reason used by the court to deny Georgian citizens living outside Georgia to take part in the voting. There was an election precinct opened in Paris, but citizens were asking for another precinct. Citizens were asking for the opening of another precinct in Strasbourg. The issue was discussed also by common courts of Georgia. They said it was okay, it was all right, it was legal to open another precinct because citizens had to travel long hours and long distance to go to Paris just to vote. So on the one hand, the courts used the secrecy argument to deny citizens living outside the right to participate, but they used the secrecy argument, but they said there was no breach of secrecy. So in other words, they used the same argument sometimes in their favor, sometimes so for, sometimes against, depending on what suited them, so to say. Also, The Constitutional Court, when it decided not to hear the lawsuit, it said that the lawsuit doesn't fall within its jurisdiction, but at the same time, and it did so without the parties, without listening to either the plaintiff or the defendant. And all of these, I would say, problems are well explained by the dissenting opinions of Mr. Tugushi and Mr. Vereshkiladze. The Constitutional Court simply avoided discussion of secrecy of election. In that case, in the case of 26 October election, and said that no constitutional control is exercised, should be exercised. In this case,
ამ გადაწყვეტილებამ, რომ საერთოდ ეს სარჩელი არწი განიხილა, პოლიტიკური კრიზისი კიდევ უფრო მეტად გაამწვავა და უფრო მეტად
by refusing to hear the lawsuit, the court has actually exacerbated the current political crisis. The processes have went beyond the constitutional framework. People, it's already 20th day or 21st day that people are standing in the street. The Constitutional Court has closed the matter. Against this background, the Parliament is making decisions that are also illegal. Basically, there is no single authority in the country that would be legitimate. The court had the only chance, was the only, I'd say, authority that could bring the processes back within the constitutional framework. So that shows how important the judiciary is, and that shows also how dangerous it is when the judiciary remains under political influence. The same goes true about the so-called agent law. Admissibility hearing was conducted, so unlike this case, election case before the Constitutional Court, the hearing with parties on agent law did take place. But in that case too, 6 judges versus 2 said, the law didn't contain any dangers, and the hearing itself, the hearing process showed well how politicized the judicial hearing was, and we already see the fruits, so to say, of the so-called agent law. So we see how the European integration process has been stalled. So it's exactly the fruit, one of the fruits of this foreign agent influence law.
ის ქვეყნები, რომელიც ხარს უჭერდნენ საქართველოს სამგაწევრიანების
Georgia's European integration process has been stalled in countries that have been traditionally supporting Georgia a lot. They have become much more, they have become critical instead of supportive. The lawsuit, hearing over the lawsuit has not finished yet, but most likely the court is not going to hear it at all any further, because the agent law has come into force. It's operational already, and as I said, we already see the fruits of this law. Now I want to turn to the matter of how common courts are doing when hearing the cases of peaceful demonstrators, peaceful rally participants. It's a paradox, but on the one hand, you see mutilated, beaten up individual citizens who are taken in front of the judge. And so there's a judge who sees a person, with a lot of injuries in the area of head, Sometimes these are life-threatening injuries, and the judges do not ask how, and where, and so on. The injuries were received. The usual accusation is that they disobeyed the police and committed administrative disorder. One of the frequent articles they use is participation. This is how it's framed: participation or participating in or organizing a violent group violence, so to say. So that's the article from the Administrative Offences Code that's been frequently used. And there's no violence, just that oftentimes the ralliers, they don't even know each other, and they are, how to say, tried in the court just simply for participation in the rallies. Sometimes the potential punishment could be from 6 to 9 years of imprisonment. Advocates, lawyers would like to discuss exactly what these people were doing and how the special forces treated these individuals. Usual response is not, this is irrelevant to the case. It's not to be heard by the court. They don't even want to listen to the full story. So that's how. So that is the kind of sterile, contentless judicial trials, judicial hearings that lead to finding and arresting hundreds of individuals. And this is it's a pity because for so many years there were several waves of judicial reform. I remember every time we would come close to the good result, to the actual result of the judicial reform, the government would kind of step back. And all the three different governments that I was with, all the three governments saw, actually, when they were getting close to some positive results, they would realize, all the three governments, that they actually needed judiciary as a political tool. So they, instead of establishing, how to say, democracy in the court, and independent courts, they'd rather retain a court that can be manipulated. Now we see breaches of the European Convention on Human Rights, but also rights under UN treaties. Even though we have a hard situation in terms of judiciary, I think it is my firm view that we should continue using all of these tools, we should keep showing these facts to the public. We should especially show these examples of extraordinary bravery by individual judges. And we should continue and proliferate various mechanisms of protest, and it shouldn't be only standing in the street, but also other forms. And I fully agree with the president, whether we believe or we don't, we should use all the legal mechanisms. And finally, at one point, this battle will yield results. One of the issues, one of the upcoming issues is judicial vetting. Judges who are not acting independently, they will have to go through the vetting system, and it's quite doubtful many judges will stay in the judiciary as a result of vetting. Well, it was a little bit hard for me to tell about these heavy things, but I will try to finish optimistically. Sooner or later, judiciary justice is revitalized by people who serve justice. They may be a few, but once again, it's contagious to be brave, and so we should continue to fight in order to reach the final result, which is a free court. Thank you very much, Ika, for a very detailed explanation. It's hard to be optimistic in this situation, but it's a positive sentiment. It's positive that we use all the possibilities, including legal mechanisms and tools, to demonstrate how problematic the existing practice is.
Right now, just a point, maybe we come back to this after. Before elections, there was the agreement between opposition parties on the Georgian Charter, and there are very clear plans, I think, that was already presented also about vetting and about reform, and there was a lot of optimism around that, but I think there was a lot at stake also for the judiciary and the ruling party not to allow this type of development. So I'll now, we can switch back to in terms of what we could do potentially, but I want to now go to our speakers and ask a few questions in light of what has been discussed, and also based on their experiences with their respective countries. Contexts are somewhat different, and so my questions are tailored to that. I think I will first go to Professor Fleck with the Hungarian context. So essentially with Hungary also, for several years now, there have been arguments by domestic stakeholders and international actors that judicial independence is compromised, and it related to top courts, also judicial administrative bodies, judges been attacked for dissenting opinions. And I was wondering, what does it mean to be a lawyer in this context? And to what degree does it make sense? What can one do in this status quo? So what are your kind of suggestions and advice from that standpoint? I know that most recently we saw some resistance also from the judges, Hungarian judges, that are not known to be very vocal about the agreement between the government and the leadership in the judiciary and the council about the connection between budgets and the reform, between salaries and the reform. But it was very small percentage of judges, also I think 15% or so. So I was wondering, what does it mean? And is there any potential in terms of judges resisting or using these courts? So what is your standpoint on that? So what can we take away from these experiences?
First, thank you for your invitation, and I realized that Georgia in quite sad situation, and in Hungary we must say that we are very sad about seeing that that the world is getting worse and worse. So Hungary now is a full autocracy. So it's not a hybrid. It's really in my opinion, it's really a full autocracy, because there's no breaks in the system. The executive is without any constitutional limits. So this is the situation, and it's more than 1.5 decade story. And the first attack was against the Constitutional Court independence, and then the media freedom, and immediately after that, an administrative attack against the judiciary. And so on and so on. So there's a long story of how to autocratize the legal system. So now we have some signs of judicial resistance. It's very interesting because it's about it's around the salaries and the budget of the judiciary. because the government offered some monies for judges if they accept a bianco check for a future administrative reform. And some elements of this reform are clearly diminish the remnants of the autonomy of the judiciary, and the independence is really in a further danger. So we must know, and I suppose we all know here, that judicial independence or judicial autonomy is not a black and white system. So I suppose, and I know that some Georgian judges are clearly and fully independent and autonomous. But sometimes it's enough for an autocratic government to use the majority of the judiciary and the apex courts, constitutional court, and the highest court to defend the political logic of the government. So the big danger is that the resistance is a kind of a non-legal tool, because the government will communicate that we have a good electoral result, and all the legal and political arguments against it are extra-legal and non-democratic. So the big lesson from Hungary is that the two-thirds majority, the so-called majoritarian logic, is quite enough to defend the surface of the autocratic regime. And you must know that electoral cases are clearly political cases, and judiciary is in a big trouble dealing with political cases because they must communicate that they are out of this political scope, so they are above the political logic. But sometimes it is a big challenge how to communicate that the legal effects, the legal tools, the judicial deeds, the judicial actions are not party politics, but a judge can keep objectivity and impartiality dealing with political cases, because it's a duty to defend constitutional values, rule of law values, democracy, and so on and so on. So there is a communication skill which is needed for judiciary and the judges, how to transform political cases into a rule of law case. So the communication is sometimes very important because it's really a challenge. It needs some social support for judicial resistance. So in Hungary, our tragic was that a twofold problem. One is that the judiciary could not act together. So there's a integration problem inside judiciary. So some judges resisted, but it's quite risky being alone. So what is important is a kind of common cooperation among some judges, the judiciary. I know that the wholeness is impossible, but some judges, 100 or 200 or some percent of judges must or can be enough to communicate that it's a kind of professional common experience and opinion. So being alone is quite risky. Another problem is that the social background, the social support missed from this picture. So the judiciary could not escape from the picture of being the tool of the state, a bureaucracy, a bureaucratic part of the state. And in autocracies, the most important message from the judiciary that they are for the people, for a future democracy, and they are not in the hands of the government. I know that in Central Europe and in Eastern Europe, there's a long history and tradition of bureaucratic and formal legal mind, and it's really a challenge how to remain objective and impartial and parallel, act as a judge, as a defender of the democracy. And it's because democracy is a political issue, and constitutional values are also political issues, and electoral issues are clearly political issues. But sometimes using legal tools are important, but using legal tools are also communication and legitimacy action. So I think for example, using EU courts and using constitutional courts inside the country are also important, not only because we are waiting for a legal output, but because we are waiting for some social and professional climate, a social and professional legitimation. So I know that in the case of Georgia now, European Union sent a clear message about the future of Georgia, and it's important because they must see. I mean, European bureaucrats, European politicians, and European public opinion must see that there are some big forces inside Georgia for democracy and for European future. And that was the case in Hungary. Some years after the Orban regime rise, the European bureaucrats and European public and professional circles send a message to us that we are for you and for the Hungarian democracy, but what we can do without the public support of democracy and democratic values. So what is very important is that judges are acting for democracy and a democratic future, and not against the government. So I think it's really risky for a judge because a judge is a lone animal. So judges are working alone normally. But in this situation, the cooperation among judges, and that was the difference, is important. So that was the difference between Poland and Hungary, because the Hungarian judges remained separated from each other, and that was the big hindrance, a big limit of the resistance. Or we can drop this phrase, because resistance is a kind of a risky word for a judge. But so acting as a constitutional actor for a judge is a sympathetic or a good role. So what is important is a kind of litigation activity, but as I heard that there is a litigation activity in Georgia against the electoral result. It's important because there are some social support for democracy and against the government. So there's no a full apathy inside the society. But the sad story is that, and this is the last lesson from Hungary, that autocracies are not open for stepping back. So it's the only solution is to communicate some common cooperative social resistance, saying no for some government steps. And I'm first a sociologist and a lawyer, of course, but and I must say that in this situation, the pure legal arguments are important, but only if somebody communicates good or well. So it's so the rule of law is also a legitimation problem. So and the big danger is that the rule of law remains an empty vase. In Hungary, the government did a lot against the rule of law values. And lastly, the social attitude toward the rule of law is a kind of non-important formal foreign institution, and it's not for us. So what is important is to show that the rule of law and constitutional values in the hands of the judiciary are for democracy, and democracy is for the people. And it means that not only political part of the democracy, but human rights, individual liberties, dignity are impossible in a country where autocratic forces can manipulate election. So that is the wider background of the election cases. So firstly, that is the Hungarian lesson.
Thank you so much for very rich response. I think there's a lot of elements that we could pick on. So moving from the more legal arguments into more societal element and support, and finally regarding the communication element of it and showing the relevance to the public, or that these are not really technical constructs and that's something that affects them daily. And I think it's also important to talk to have this signal and support from the public to independent judges, because I think a lot of the time politicians are using this argument, sort of they benefit from judiciaries that's isolated and kind of weaker. We saw that in Italy, where you have rhetorical attacks, and I think in many other countries that we see attacks towards the judiciary, discrediting judges, so that then they don't have popular support, and we have very low level of public trust towards the judges. So there are many interesting elements there that we can possibly require further discussion. It's quite unfortunate. The Hungarian example, when you started talking about it, was that that's a model, inspirational model for the Georgian dream, to have something like that inside the EU. So that's why they are saying we want Europe, but we want Europe with sovereignty and dignity, like very much this authoritarian playbook really travels, which is, I think, makes it even more important to have the anti-authoritarian playbook, which kind of outlines this element. So I think since we talked about judges and mobilization of judges, and you mentioned some kind of differences between Poland and Hungary in terms of how judges mobilized, maybe next I go to Marcin to maybe he reflects on what has been a lesson from Poland, and why do you think Poland stands out in this respect? So maybe mostly focusing on a period up to December last year in terms of what were your experiences and what has worked in the Polish context in this respect. Marcin, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to express my solidarity with all of the Georgian people. I hope that you will get back on the right track as Georgia as soon as possible. In the context of lessons learned, Poland in the last year has become a critical case study in case of the threat for the judicial independence. And the Polish civil society and Polish judges had broad experience in combating those threats. We had a number of victories and defeats in that field. As a civil society sector, we were trying to approach this issue in different ways. First of all, I would say that there were 4 pillars of our activities in that field. First of all, communication that Professor Fleck has mentioned. The constitutional crisis started in 2015 with the attack on the Constitutional Tribunal in Poland, and we have used this problem to support the communication of the Constitutional Tribunal, because we know that the public authority is not a master in public relations. So to provide them with a support in the public relations, we acted by creating statements, using our social media to some kind counteract myths that were in the government's narrative on the Constitutional Tribunal. There were myths regarding the communist origins of the Constitutional Tribunal, the fact that Poland does not need a Constitutional Tribunal at all, or that the Law and Justice has won the election, so that there should not be anybody that will be counteracting their actions right now, since they have the support of the nations. So communication, the first effective element of strategy towards threats for judicial independence. We are also active in the field of demonstrations, not only organizing demonstrations together with other civil society actors, but also providing legal support for those persons who take part in the demonstrations, and provide them with lawyers supporting all of the protesters who faced repressions, making statements in their defense. There was also, of course, the area of litigation, strategic litigation that has been used to counteract specific actions of the government. We have started with making a complaint to the prosecution unit, despite the fact that it was already after the process of a hostile takeover by the government. But we wanted to show that the institution does not work, that to provide the public opinion with the details, and we were successful because the court finally said that we were right in the context of our complaint on the government, who was not publishing Constitutional Tribunal judgments. In the next step, we were able to establish a coalition of NGOs who were particularly active in the strategic litigation, provide judges and lawyers who were facing disciplinary sanctions with legal aid. The committee was also active in creating communication reports and making the voice of the civil society stronger. And we were also able, by establishing the committee, to avoid the cacophony of different voices. So our message was quite clear and quite unique in that context. And lastly, a lot of advocacy, not only national advocacy regarding the actions in our parliament, participating in the committees of the Polish Sejm, taking part in the legislative process, drafting legal opinions, providing arguments, being active in public media, in media generally, providing information about the clear consequences of the act proposed by the government, but we were also active in the field of international advocacy. So we're trying to create some kind of coalition of foreign governments or foreign organizations, UN bodies, Council of Europe bodies, who will be making statements or will support the civil society, the third sector in Poland. And it was quite successful, since we were able to, for example, have an interest of UN special rapporteur on the judicial, on the independence of lawyers and judges, who made a comment regarding one of the cases of judges who were prosecuted for not applying pretrial detention against one of the persons accused of rape, nevertheless. But all in all, I think the most crucial element of our road towards the democracy was that we were able to have judges on our side. We were able to find judges who were examples of resistance, persons who could be recognized by public opinion as some kind of Justice Hercules, as in working philosophy, acting to resist, to show that they are not trying to support the government, that they are rather refusing political decisions, that they are boycotting specific reforms. And judges like Tuleya, Jurek, Juszczyszyn, who ended finally in Strasbourg with specific judgments, were some kind of symbols. And those symbols allowed us, as a civil society, as the judicial community in Poland, to create a story regarding the judicial resistance in Poland. So I think this element was crucial in our road towards the democracy and towards the win in October. Of course, there was also the economic background, which was also very important. Yeah, the worsening economy in Poland resulted in and allowed us to combine those two issues, saying that we had a bad economy because the government is not obliged by the rule of law principles. And I think that's all I would like to say right now.
Thank you so much. I think there were a few very important points. I think I like especially your comment about the symbols, judges as symbols. I think one differentiating factor for Polish judiciary was that you had resources internally within the judiciary to do that. I found it very difficult in the Georgian context, having interviewed judges, that first of all, it's a very small judiciary, only 300 judges. And it's very difficult to, and especially because of the recruitment politics, but idea, I think it's very good that we could take something like that up. And when I was interviewing judges, unfortunately, you would hear, we cannot expect judges to be heroes. And yeah, it's something that I think should change in a way. But I think it's a very
comment. In Poland, the vast majority of judges were passive. There were only few names, I think not more than 40, 50 among the Polish judiciary, who were really active and who were open to face consequences for their brave actions. You already have the case of Maja Bakradze, yeah? Why shouldn't you use that as an element of judicial resistance towards authoritarian regime? Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so I think there's a potential definitely there. I think there's a lot to discuss in Poland in terms of restoration of the rule of law and the challenges, because it's also not so easy after the victory. We are a year into the process, and also Polish case shows that we shouldn't have illusions about quick recovery in this respect, even if you have all the right elements, except for the president. So maybe we'll see up to the elections. Yeah, I mean, I think I want to go to the next speaker, but maybe if we have time, I'll circle back to this issue because there's a lot to discuss there. And I really want to go to our final speaker with Romania, Dragoș Kalin, Judge Kalin. I think with Romania, I have a slightly different set of questions because of the developments in Romania and the Constitutional Court decision that we saw. I think it was 6th of December, where the Constitutional Court annulled the presidential election results, first round. So it sounds like, and we have all this discussion about the foreign interference into the elections and courts stepping up. And I was wondering, how would you assess this decision? Is it something that is kind of a good example to show to the other courts in the region? How consistent do you think it is with the EU law and the CTHR and Venice Commission principles and rules? So just general brief reflections on that first, and then I have more questions.
Thank you for the invitation, Nino. First of all, I would like to say just a few words about the reaction of Romanian judges to defend the rule of law, because in Romania it was like in Poland, but in fact it was not a direct attack against the judiciary. It was indirect attack on the judiciary using part of judiciary. For example, the European Court of Justice found the concrete practice followed by the chief inspector of the Judicial Inspectorate in the exercise of his prerogatives with explicit reference to the examples mentioned by the European Commission, which may show that the powers of the Judicial Inspectorate were used on several occasions for the purpose of political scrutiny of judicial activity, some of which were also included in Commission reports. In Romania, between 2018 and 2019, several harmful legislative amendments were adopted in the field of judiciary, criticized by all relevant international entities, such as the limitation of the freedom of expression of judges and prosecutors, the establishment of a new separate section, a special section prosecutor's office exclusively for the investigation of offenses committed by judges and prosecutors, and some changements regarding the material liability of judges and prosecutors. And after that, the judges react, and the opinion of the Bureau of the Consultative Council of European Judges, following a request by the Romanian Judges Forum Association as regard the situation on the independence of the judiciary in Romania, I think in April 2019, confirmed the right of Romanian judges to react. So judges cannot possibly watch behavior contrary to the principles of the rule of law, but have the obligation to draw attention to the consequences to which all persons may be exposed if certain legislative proposals are adopted, as it is within the general interest of the community to express a point of view or take a stance. Judges cannot invoke their obligation or of circumspection when they observe facts in society in which may affect or endanger the act or even the very idea of justice. So public protest on the steps of the courts or by means of public memos and letters, for example, in 2017 in October, more than 4,000 judges and prosecutors in Romania signed a letter against the changements of the law of the judiciary. Daily dialogue with the relevant international bodies as European Commission, European Parliament, Venice Commission, Greco, Consultative Council of Judges, European Network of Judicial Councils, request for preliminary rulings refer to the Court of Justice of the European Union, together with internal proceedings like exception of unconstitutionality pending before the Constitutional Court or legal proceedings, repeated call to all internal public authorities. All these forms are legitimate, and in the case of Romanian judges, all these forms have been gradually followed in the absence of serious involvement of European Commission in infringement proceedings or for the suspension of legislative provisions by the Court of Justice of the European Union with imminent risk to affect independence of justice, like in the case of Poland. But in the case of Romania, this kind of resistance of judges, of brave judges, and in fact, 4,000 judges signed this petition, this memorandum. It was absolutely necessary to preserve the rule of law in our country. Regarding the populist tendencies in the recent years, the existence of a strong constitutional court is essential, because the member states of the European Union have the great chance of doubling the national constitutional review, practically by reviews performed by the European Court of Justice at the level of European Union regarding the national legislative solutions, by referring to the principle of independence of judges, as it derives mainly from the right of the fair trial established by the Article 47, the second paragraph of the Charter of Fundamental Rights. So, with reference to the Article 19 of the TEU. So, the national review is doubled by the judgment of the European Court of Justice. Also, national review can be tripled by the judgment of European Court of Human Rights, and we have the protocol number 16. But all this mechanism requires a lot of time, during which it's impossible to quick review. It's more harmful than it seems at first glance. In case of Romania, this effect was caused by the extremely late resolution of the objection of unconstitutionality regarding the emergency ordinances issued in the matter of the laws of justice by the government. 3 years or maybe 4 years to pronounce a judgment in one of this kind of cases, it's not enough. But the real valorization of the opinions of the Venice Commission, for example, came from the Court of Justice of the European Union, as the judgment issued in the request for preliminary ruling submitted by Romanian or Polish courts regarding the rule of law solidly relied on contribution of the Venice Commission. It is a ricochet efficiency, indirect and yet binding, but it seems to be the only form in which the opinions of the Venice Commission can become useful in countries with slippage regarding the independence of the judiciary in the absence of any instruments of coercion, at least about general principles regarding the rule of law. However, such a mechanism, it's not useful for Georgia, a state outside the European Union, where authoritarian tendency seems impossible to mitigate. But you have the protocol number 16, and maybe it is important to use this kind. But you need brave judges and strong judiciary to react in cases like this. Regarding the last judgment of the Constitutional Court of Romania, number 32, on December 6, 2024, the reasoning is not very convincing. First of all, the Constitutional Court took action ex officio, but 4 days earlier, the Constitutional Court has validated the first round of the presidential elections. In the meantime, declassified notes issued by various intelligence services in Romania were published, and the Constitutional Court noted the attribution, the power of the Constitutional Court, according to which it shall monitor the observance of the procedure for the election of the president, regulated by the Constitution, cannot be interpreted restrictively. So they used this principle of the supremacy of the Constitution, and they pronounced the judgment. Exercising this attribution after declassification on December 4, I think, 2024, of the documents presented in front of the Supreme Council of National Defense on November 28 or 29, and their public disclosure, the court took note of their content, in addition to those said in the information notes of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, the Foreign Intelligence Service, the Romanian Intelligence Service, and the Special Telecommunication Service. The court noted that the electoral process concerning the election of the President of Romania was vitiated through its conducts and all stages by multiple irregularities and violation of electoral legislation that distorted the free and fair nature of the vote by citizens, and the equal opportunities of electoral competitors affect the transparent and fair nature of the electoral campaign and disregard the legal regulation on its financing. And aspects have had a convergent effect of disregarding the essential principle of democratic election. practically the freely expressed nature of the vote was infringed by the fact that the voters were misinformed by means of an electoral campaign in which one of the candidates benefit from an aggression promotion carried out by with the circumvention of national electoral legislation and by the abusive exploitation of algorithm of social media platforms like TikTok. And this kind of manipulation of the vote was all more obvious as the electoral materials promoting a candidate did not bear this specific sign of electoral advertising according to the national law. In addition, the candidate also benefit from preferential treatment on social media platforms, which had the effect of distorting the expression of the will of voters. The Romanian Constitutional Court invoked the explanatory report to the Code of Good Practice in Electoral Matters, guidelines adopted by the Venice Commission, I think in 2002. And they used this internal information notes of the Romanian intelligence services to nullify the election. But the Constitutional Court of Romania didn't note expressly the Russian interference in the electoral process and campaign. Moreover, no one has seen these secret documents of intelligence services. It is assumed that were seen by the judges of the Constitutional Court of Romania. And the former US ambassador to Romania, Mr. Zuckerman, stated that there is multiple evidence which the Romanian Romanian public does not suspect. This practically refers to an American aid for the Romanian intelligence services. Only this week, I think this Wednesday, the president of Romania, Mr. Iohannis, named Russia regarding the state that allegedly intervened in the presidential elections. But this judgment probably is compatible with some case law of European Court of Human Rights and Venice Commission, because they both indicate the choice of offering fresh elections by law as mitigating the gravity of an annulment. And we have some judgments, Riza against Bulgaria and Kerimova against Azerbaijan, I think. And we have Krasnov and Skuratov against Russia. But last week, Council of Europe, the Parliamentary Assembly, sent a request to the Venice Commission, and they will publish a report on the cancellation of election results by Constitutional Court, I think in March 2025. No, this Romanian's failure wasn't the court timing, but yes, there is a debate in Romania that this was a failure of the Romanian secret services, plus a failure of the prosecutors. An investigation is now underway at the General Prosecutor's Office, and public opinion has doubt about the existence of those secret documents related to Russian interference. And the pro-Russian candidate has just declared that the judges of the Constitutional Court risk to be held criminal liable, saying that by what you decided on December 6th, did you not swear perjury? Repair your mistake, otherwise you will not find refuge even in hell. You risk paying for the annulled vote with hard year in prison, and don't forget that no one is above the law. Last week, the European Commission opens formal proceedings against TikTok on election risk under the Digital Services Act, and we are waiting for their conclusions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, extremely interesting that this debate with foreign interferences and the Constitutional Court's role in this situation is now unfolding based on experiences of several countries, including Romania. And let's see what happened. It was also very interesting to hear about the resistance patterns also from within the Romanian judiciary. I understand that the associations also play a big role in this. Yeah, it's an interesting example that we could also take a look at. I think since we are very much, so thank you so much for your comments. We are very much short in time. So I was wondering, since a few minutes remain, if there's anyone that has questions, or if some of the panelists have questions to other panelists. Now it's an opportunity for you to ask those. I'll give you a minute or so to think about it. I don't see any hands up yet. Okay, Kaha, please.
Hello, my name is Kaha Tsikarishvili. I'm a member of a group of independent lawyers. I'm sorry I was late. I could not attend the presentations, but I have a question, and I'm sorry if you have already talked about it. My question is whether you have a public debate of legal professionals on the court decisions which are most important for the development of the legal framework or high-profile cases, and whether these public debates influences the future development of the case law. That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaha. Do any of the speakers have any thoughts about this?
I think I can take the floor. It's not a rule in Poland. It's rather an exception where such discussion is taking place and where it influenced the jurisprudence of our courts. I think that the best example in the last years was the resolution from our Supreme Court concerning the status of judges who were appointed with the participation of National Council of Judiciary, who was unlawfully selected by the Parliament of Poland. And the public dispute regarding the lack of independence and the discussion in the groups of lawyers, the media, lead to one of the courts asking the CJEU for preliminary rulings, and then resulted in a resolution from the combined chambers of our Supreme Court, where the chambers referred to the discussion and to the evidence gathered by the public community to use it as an argument for the resolution. So I think it's rather an exception than the rule.
May I have a follow-up question on this, Marcin? In relation to the Constitutional Court, a lot of the time we're discussing that Constitutional Court is captured in the Polish context, and then the question is, to what degree its decisions should be allocated any time to in the public debate? Personally, I was reading Georgian Constitutional Court decisions, and I was thinking, should I, as a lawyer, even engage in this and waste my time on really writing something about it? Or like maybe dissenting opinions, yeah, give some good arguments as to how it should look like, but so do we give add legitimacy to its decisions if we go to the court and then discuss its arguments? Or so what is your take on that? Because it has been a while Constitutional Court has been doing this.
Yeah. The Constitutional Tribunal in Poland has been acting in the last years as a tool to rubber stamp the most controversial amendments adopted by the ruling majority. Now, when the ruling majority is in opposition, they are trying to act as a defender of an ancient regime. As it comes to our policy towards the Constitutional Tribunal, in 2016, we have decided when the new head of the Constitutional Tribunal was selected, and probably was selected with the violation of law, we have decided to boycott the Constitutional Tribunal, not to send more amicus curiae briefs, and not to litigate before the Constitutional Tribunal. And hopefully we were able to get a case from the European Court of Human Rights where the ECHR say that we were not we didn't need to make a complaint to the Constitutional Tribunal in order to have a standing before the European Court of Human Rights. It was the case Solska-Rybicka versus Poland, and that was a good decision from their side. It allowed us not to have a dispute towards about the Constitutional Tribunal.
I see, thanks.
In case of Romania, it was a
Yes.
debate, a huge debate, and I remember a letter in October 2017 and another letter in 2019, and a lot of law professors sustained the magistracy, the judges, and their protest. But I don't know, it was not very important for the Constitutional Court of Romania, for example, because the Constitutional Court of Romania has backed some of these legislative changes, refusing to make use of the opinion of the Venice Commission in the constitutional review, but also trying to create an internal wall for not giving effects to the application of the precedents law for the case law of the European Union law, respectively the judgment of the Court of Justice of the European Union regarding the rule of law delivered on the judicial reforms following refers from ordinary courts of Romania. But these debates, the letters of the law professors and were mentioned by the Venice Commission, for example, or the European Commission in their reports. It was necessary.
I see, thank you. Any other comments on the public debate aspect of it?
Yeah, for just one moment, one sentence from Hungary. I think we must know that constitutional judges are not judges in a sense in this situation. So it's they produce legal arguments most of the time for the governmental logic, but the arguments are important. So I know that we cannot use constitutional court as a defender of the rule of law and democracy, but all arguments against autocracies are important. So it's a channel for communicate arguments, constitutional arguments. Once I asked a constitutional judge the last remnants of the non-governmental judge, and he said that he will not resign because one voice is important. So it's really I must say that arguments are important here.
Thank you so much. If there are no further comments on this, then maybe I go to Irakli for the final question of this meeting.
Hello, everyone. And thank you very much for the interesting discussion. I just heard, as Mr. Zoltan was speaking, he said something like the judges, it's hard for judges to make decisions against government. It's hard to call them for resistance and turn them into heroes. So more or less, this problem seems to be a pain for many countries, not only for Georgia. In other words, judges being passive and not raising their voice. I'm sorry, the voice is interrupted, and I'll try to translate what I hear.
Sorry, I personally don't hear.
I'm not hearing anything yet.
Am I the one? Yeah, nothing is heard. Let's see if he... Okay, so what were the exact problems with the judicial mobilization, and was there a solution, if any? This is what if I heard correctly. Mr. Zoltan said it's hard to mobilize judges to resist and make decisions, not in favor of the government. And it seems to be a problem for many countries.
and he's stuck again now. I think the question was, what were the specific problems of judicial mobilization, and how did you, if any, resolution, how did you manage to resolve these issues, if any? Yeah, that's it. I think. Yeah, that's it.
I see the point. I can answer this very shortly. One point is the importance of the cooperation among judges themselves. So it's very important to communicate with each other, share experiences, share values and opinions. The second is to formulate some kind of cooperation with civil society, NGOs, because normally autocracies attack NGOs also. So this and the third point is a kind of cooperation among legal professionals, other professionals, legal professors, academics, lawyers, and civil society lawyers. So there's a big importance of a legal argument, a cooperative legal argument against autocratic deeds. It means it's not a judicial opinion, it's a legal opinion. And it's hard to formulate a cooperation among different legal professionals because of the divergence of the interests. But judges must invite other legal professionals to cooperate for rule of law values, for European Georgian future, and other rule of law values. So the cooperation is very important, because alone it's impossible to fight against a big autocratic forces.
Thank you so much for the roadmap into the.
Now we have the situation to the contrary, that we have a cooperation and communication between autocratic judges. So they cooperate with each other against non-autocratic judges. So.
ნინო, შენი ხმა არის მის? აი ძალიან ცუდად.
There is no sound yet.
მე მქონდა ერთი კითხვა.
Peter has a question. Yes, please go ahead.
First of all, thank you so much to our speakers, dear Eka, Mr. Zoltan, Mr. Dragos, Mr. Martin. It was really very helpful your sharing your experience, because really for us it's very important in this situation to have the experience and to have recommendation from professionals who have passed this way, and it is very relevant for us to envisage your opinion in our future work and how we will continue our struggle. And one very small question, it is very new information that the General Secretary of the Council of Europe, Alan Burns, met Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze, and they decided that and agreed that to calm the situation, it will be important to have some changes on the law of transparency for for foreign agencies. And this was the agreement between them. And what do you think when there is like 23rd day of protest outside and demonstrants, as Eka mentioned, from 500 people, 300 are in prison and tortured and beaten, and people demand new elections and to release this prison? Is this the right decision? And how do you think that protesters have to agree on this decision or continue the protest? What will be your recommendations and opinion on things? Thank you so much again, and see you, I think, in our next discussions. And thank you, Nino, for this great moderating and gathering again these brilliant speakers today.
Thank you. Do you hear my voice, first of all? Do you hear my voice?
Miss.
Yeah. So if there are any comments on this, so the question is essentially, is there any, the way I understand it, the room for discussion on specifics of particular laws under this situation as a kind of compromising on this? It's probably something that the people demonstrating could have an answer to. Personally, I wouldn't say we could negotiate something like this under the current setup, because this is secondary to the electoral integrity. But if there are any other opinions on this.
I said to say that I'm very pessimistic about the international organization stepping on in this kind of issue, because there is a international usage, the so-called small steps policy. But when people are in jail and are suffering, the small step international policy is tragic. So I must say that a clear and loud voice needed for not accepting such kind of bad compromise, because the human suffering is much more important here.
Thank you so much. Any other comments? That's the last chance. Otherwise, I would thank our fantastic speakers for finding time for this discussion. I think it's very helpful to start thinking in terms of strategies in this very complex situation. I think I will go back to Keta to close the session, but yeah, thank you so much, and I hope we continue these discussions in the new year as well.
I will just very shortly again thank everyone. Also thank our members of the network. They are always supporting us, and this international support and sharing your experience for us is very useful, very motivated, I will say, because this also the sanctions which is coming to the government now motivates people more to struggle. And so the important message from European Parliament also that they hear us, that they see us, gives us more motivation to struggle and to go further. So I will just end here. Thank you everyone for participating, for supporting, and I think that in the next discussions we will meet in more optimistic notes, and we'll have some changes and ways how we'll develop in Georgia our situation. Thank you so much to everyone, and looking forward to see you again on our discussions.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Goodbye.
მადლობა, წარმატებები.
წარმატებები.